welcome all to this exciting session of Sattology with a very prominent author and guest and his views on various topics concerned with the community, mostly Hindu community, Dharmic community, have been widely accepted. And also his observations on the global Hindu diaspora has been also very widely accepted. So one of the things we're going to focus on is the burning topics, and we're going to analyze it academically. How does it apply? So number one is the lot of conversation is going on around racism and other things, and whether it applies to the Indian community or Hindu community or Dharmic community or not, we'll discuss that. So without delay, I would like to welcome Shri Ratan Sharda ji from India.
Namaskar. Namaskar, Aditya ji.
So first of all,
Good to be
based
back.
on your, we are doing very well. It's very sunny morning here. So based on our talk, and you wrote
Great.
a couple of days back, you wrote an article also, and also you have analyzed similar situations in the past. US is going through a tough time, and it is important for our students and people who are watching to understand our perspective on these issues. So my opening comments will be, and then I would like to ask you that question will be that race as an issue never existed in a Vedic society or Dharmic society, because we believe in soul, and we believe that bodies can be of different types, shapes, or colors. It has no connection with the soul. Soul is always pure, divine, and is the highest. It is the only living force in a body. So, since we think on the terms of soul and spiritual, I think the when people ask me and talk to me about the race issue, I said from my community perspective, it doesn't exist, because it doesn't matter to me whether you're black, brown, green, any skin color you may have. I go for the essence of who you are. Please, would you like to do an opening comment on that, please?
Yeah, sure. British did try to create a race history in India by talking about Dravid and Aryan civilizations as separate civilizations and those who clashed. But as the scientific evidence proves, and as continuous scientific investigations have shown, they were not two different races at all. So there is same DNA in the dark-skinned South Indian, what is there in the fair-skinned Kashmiri person. And same proves to be there in the eastern part of India as well as western part of India. So as a landmass, as a population of a landmass, we share the same DNA, which is at least 30-40,000-year-old data that we know as of now. So this racism was never a part of Indian psyche. And secondly, we had rishis who went from north to south. We had Agastya, for example, we had rishis from south like Adi Shankaracharya, who went all the way to north. He traveled all over India. We had Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikh religion, who traveled all over India, not just all over India, but also outside India, all the African continent, the northern part, including Tibet, etc. So we had totally oneness in the mind. And if you look at our gods, all our prominent gods are dark. Shiva, Mahadev, Shiv Shankar is black, Krishna is black, Ram is black. So there is no issue of what colors we talk about. What we inherited in the so-called color of the skin racism or the psychology came because of British. Because British were Goras and whites, and they ruled over India for nearly 200 years. So people had a certain inferiority complex, and certain people started believing. But as such, just as skin deep, there was not at all any sign of any racism in our entire civilization. We had fisherman's son becoming a great rishi with Vedavyas. Valmiki, son of a man who was actually a dacoit, becoming Rishi Valmiki. Ratnakar Daku was called. So there are so many examples of, there is a rishi called Jabali, who was a son of a prostitute. When he went to his guru, he asked him, "Who are you?" He very plainly said, "I don't know my father." And Rishi was so happy, and he made him as one of the biggest, most knowledgeable Rishi. So as such, neither is these values have any deep root here, nor racism has a deep root here. That is the fundamental base I can talk about.
No, very good point. And also, the you're absolutely right. Herbert Hope Risley was deputed by the British to install caste system in India, which is a Portuguese term started in 1600s, especially to demonize Hinduism. The word caste is not a Hindu word at all. It's a European demonization or derogatory word against Hinduism. Now, coming back to this point of racism, which you mentioned so correctly about our ancient traditions. So, when I'm asked this question, which side are you on? And my answer to this is that for me, all lives matter.
If about what Hindus thought, yeah.
Go ahead, please. What are you saying? You said
No, it's okay. We can carry on. I talked about this social hierarchy which people blame on India. Although Lord Krishna, Bhagwan Krishna talked about Varna, which is based on your human nature, what you want to do in life. So depending on what you do in life, you become a Brahmin or you become a Kshatriya or you become a Vaishya. So these Varnas were based on your own human nature, what you want to do, what you're doing in life. So it depended on profession, not on birth. It was only later part of slavery that slowly this became stratified in terms of what today we call caste. It was jati, which was again not about any untouchability or high and low, but distortion came. We have to accept that distortion came. And if you look at hierarchy, where there is no hierarchy, there are noble people in Britain, and there are common people in Britain that don't mix up. You have hierarchies in USA of rich professionals and the poor American, whether black or white. So any society would create some kind of social hierarchy which will depend on privileges a person has. It's not correct, but as long as it remains solely as a professional hierarchy, it will be there. Even in Muslims, there's Aslaf and Ashraf. Ashraf are high caste born, and Ajlafs are low caste born and typically economically backward. They don't mix up. So this is a poor human nature which has to be overcome. That was democracy is very important because democracy gives you enough opportunities to break those barriers and join the next rank. So that's the beauty of democracy.
absolutely. See, the another aspect is, when people ask us question that why we don't recognize, and I think the point that comes to my mind is that as a community or knowledge seekers, I would call it, we are knowledge seekers. We do not distinguish between anyone, but at the same time we acknowledge the human suffering. So if there is a human
Yes.
pain, we acknowledge it. So when something wrong is happened, which we call it adharma, which is like subduing someone or hurting someone, we naturally feel the pain for it. So
Yes.
as a community, we are not racially or inclined or insensitive. We do feel about
No,
it.
we are not engineered that way. I would put it that we are not engineered that way at all. We are not engineered to hate people on the base of color, skin, or race. Because we have so many races, if you call in terms of races, every kind of people in India. There has been never a sense of discrimination. If that is some kind of social issues which are there in every country. But as a fundamental dharmic reality, as part of our culture, there is no such thing as racism and no such thing as what we call high and low. It happened, distortion happened, we overcame. Like America is trying to overcome its own issue of prejudice against the black, whom they enslaved and had so many atrocities. Similarly, they are also trying to overcome this issue.
See, one classical example is, and I would like to comment, you got to comment on it as exactly afterwards, is the UK ruled India for 300 years and they did a lot of injustices on India. Islamic nations or Muslims did a lot of injustices on India, but Hindu as a community never hated them. This is a remarkable situation found in no other community. There is no hatred on the ground in Hinduism or Hindu followers against any of these invaders. What do you say on that, please?
See, it's acceptable. We have seen it all the time. Even during partition, we saw it that in spite of an entire nation created out of India in the name of religion, India didn't adopt religion as a base of its nationality, its culture, its geography. And they tried their best to be good neighbors. They have tried to be best with the people of the same religion who remained behind in India. Those people who remained behind India didn't go to Pakistan, although Pakistan was created on base of religion. They get equal rights, they get equal privileges. In fact, they get more privilege and more rights than a majority has. There are specific articles in the Constitution which safeguard their own cultural nurturing, their own education institutions, which right even Hindus don't have. They have rights to manage their own churches, their own mosques, which even Hindus don't have. So that way, we have a reverse discrimination where the minorities have better rights in some cases and equal rights in generally every case, despite what we have gone through.
No, absolutely. So there is another thing which comes to my mind is when when we see very successful Indians in the West, and sometimes they're accused of being aloof from the society, very aloof. And personally, I know many of them. They're not aloof, but their way of working is different. They may want to be behind the scenes, not in front of the scenes. The reason is the philosophy of karma that they follow. They don't want the right hand to know what the left hand is doing. So it doesn't mean they're aloof or disconnected. They are just trying to be as they're just trying to do a charity with no expectation. Let us put it that way. So this kind of attitude creates a some kind of a distrust amongst other people, thinking that these guys don't get involved in the society. And through you, I would like to also you to comment on it, so that they also hear from your perspective. You are in India, that what is that culture that keeps them like this. So actually they are not aloof from my point of view. It's just that they don't want to be seen in public.
Yeah. See, I have been to US at least 4 or 5 times. My first visit was very much earlier in the days of I think 1983, when I went for my father-in-law's operation in Houston, and I found attitude to Indians not very happy. I mean, they looked down upon us. They talked to me in a way. They were surprised that I speak good English. That was the only plus point they would find in me. But over the years, I've seen the attitude has changed. See, the time when India, as I said earlier in some other place, that the first generation of Indians who went to USA went there for better opportunities. They were professionals and they were trying to settle down in life, and they did not get into day-to-day affairs, the political affairs or the community affairs. But as they settled down, as their daughters and son, the first generation Americans, I would say, with much more comfort in the society than their parents had, they have mixed up very well. You see the Congress, we have congressmen and congresswomen. We have seen in the cabinet various people in the cabinet, all from Indian origin, and they are as American as everybody else. I find them more American than they being Indian, apart from their names and apart from their color of the skin. So the mindset is definitely American. They do mix up. They do move into the society. Now there are more ambitious people who want to be part of the society in every way, including community service. And there are Hindu organizations serving the every community, including black and white, in this corona epidemic. There are people collecting food, supplying foods, taking care of the patients in every possible way. So the size of community, if you look at the work they are doing, it is size is much smaller than what work kind of work they do, positive work they do for the society. So this feeling of, and if you go to any other country where you are an outsider, there is a sense of community where the communities don't easily mix up. If you ask me, do the Americans in Bombay or Mumbai or Delhi mix up with the society? I don't really think so. Those who become part of academia or those become part of the profession, who become corporate chiefs or managers there, they mix up. So depending on profession, what you do, depending on what work you do, every community mixes up. It takes a little more time. There is a huge cultural difference between the first generation USA people, the people from India and from other places. Even if you look at Trinidad, Tobago, and Mauritius and Fiji, the Indians, they are part of the biggest part of political life there. So I don't think that's a right charge to make against Indians. Yes, the earlier generation had its own compulsions, but I think the new generation that is seen now in every country is very happily mixing up, going out in society, mixing up, working with them, working for them in every possible way.
So in terms of political process also, there is a general conception that the Indians or Hindu Americans or Hindus generally from that community don't mix up with politics. And my answer to that is they do help. I think many politicians cannot fight elections without their money also. They do help, but they somehow it has been ingrained in them that they want to be the on the sides, not actively part in the politics. I personally don't agree to that. I want Indians to more come in the active politics, especially in the Western countries, to protect their own interests. They need to be represented, and when they have adopted this country as a home, particularly USA, then they must come out and participate active in the process.
That will also happen.
Yes.
That will also happen. You look at Parsis; they are very minute community in India. You look at Sikhs, then the community numbers are very low, but the representation in society is very high because they're active, outgoing, communities. I think that will happen in US also, and the environment also has to be that way. Right now, they may feel they're too insignificant, but like you said, even today, Indian money is there in the politics. You are one of those people who are into active politics, so that will also happen. How many years have passed, if you ask me really, apart from some Sikhs moving into Texas for farming, etc., or in Canada, the real migration started in the year 1970s or 80s. So it's just second generation looking at. And I think any generation which settles will take that much time. And I'm sure that they are very eager to get into mainstream, be very active. And I hope they are also, active in political science. They can understand the sensitivity of issues. For example, you talked about the current situation in America. I would expect him to be more active, more vocal about what's happening there, because they want to take interest in elections. They discuss a lot about who president will be, but ultimately president reflects the community they come from. So naturally, at the local level also, they can't be just bystanders. But I think that will also change.
No, you are absolutely right here. So what I have seen and noticed is that many Indians are now they immediately align with the very creative section of the population. I would say very creative. So it can be or very enterprising part of the population. So we see a great friendship between Jews and Indians, and great friendship between Caucasians and Indians, and also a great collaboration between blacks and Indians, but at different levels. It's not uniform. Like for example, Atlanta, many Indian businesses, they are very well working with the leadership from the black community. And in terms of California, and it's definitely not on the basis of the skin color, because Indians also tend to be on the darker side. It's purely on the basis of skills and the business acumen. Mostly that type of collaboration is there, or academic.
Yeah,
So
absolutely right. See, for a large country like India, if you ask me till year 1990s or 2000, the people under below Sahyadris, or four states, that is Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka, were kind of cut off from the other part of the northern India till this became IT expert professionally. They had to travel all over India, and Indians from north had to go to south. Then slowly they realized that how close they are. They started working together, first with some fun, later with very seriousness. I think it depends on what kind of profession you are, what you are. So today there are more people from South India to north, more people from north to south. That happened on Northeast Indians who were kind of cut off for so many years because of poor economic conditions and very poor development there. Since last 5 6 years, or when the economic development has reached Northeast, connectivity has improved. We find a lot of Northeast Indians all over India. So as the requirement of the society changes, as the professions change, as the industry changes, you'll find this mixing up much more than what you saw earlier on. Like you rightly said, depends on your community, what you're working on. You're working in an area where there are more blacks, you will interact with blacks very happily. African people, we're working in North America, where they may be in a profession where there are more white skinned people, they'll interact with them. For them, color doesn't matter. It matters what profession you are, and they must interact well. They must have humility to deal with people, that warmth with people that we see everywhere. I've been to Canada, I've seen that how Indians are even taken to public administration. My own nephew works in Canadian government. So there are people who are in every walk of life. Depending on the requirement, depending on the industry, these things will happen. It is not that you compulsorily move people out. You could not move a Tamil person to North unless there is a profession. You could not move a Delhi guy ever into Tamil Nadu till it required, because Tamil Nadu language, apart from English, you can't understand any North Indian language. But slowly they are also learning. So it all depends on what kind of economy, what kind of industry you have. Then it will happen. It will happen naturally. Indians don't draw themselves back from any area, any nation. Today we are in 130 or plus countries naturally, because you don't bother with the what kind of color they have, what kind of religion they have. They go and mix up, live happily. They are there in Latin America now. Till some years back, they were not there. Their industrialists there. They are doing wonderful work there. So it will happen. We are very mobile people. We are people with high migration nature, because that was our nature even 5,000 years back. We were traveling all over India when people are still building ships. So naturally, that in inherent DNA of us is to travel wherever there is work, where there is business, they will go and they will go. So then, depending on what business you are in, what profession you are in, mix up with the people, the right people. There is no doubt at all in my mind that there is any sense of separation or sense of isolation they have. Yes, first generation had. I said that was compulsion of their profession, compulsion of their settling down. But I firmly believe that's not more. I have met youth there, who are more American than they are Indian. So only they have that sense of root in India, but their entire way of thinking, when I talk to them on various topics, I realize very different.
So, a very good point you said. One last point on this discussion I'd like to add is in US there is very as Indian community is growing, and Hindu community is growing in the US. And for the viewers, I must tell you that the majority of when you call Indian means Hindu. There, some of the cultural beliefs, that's the only place where I feel that the Hindu community gets a little bit defensive when somebody questions their community beliefs. Like they believe in deity worship. It's not idol worship. They believe in deity worship. When somebody religiously targets them on the basis of idolatry, and that's where the real confrontation starts, because deity worship, or whatever you call it, is a scientific process. So Hindus generally never accuse others or never become insecure of other spiritual practices, and at the same time the rest of the Americans or our Western countries have to accept their spiritual practices also. So there has to be that mutual acceptance and appreciation for each other's policies, each other's ways of worship.
I see no reason at all about being defensive. Why do people worship cross? Tell me. Cross is cross not a symbol? In Christianity, you don't worship any idol. But then, what is Jesus Christ doing on the cross? And why nearly every Christian has a cross at home, has a locket in his or her neck? Why? Because you need some kind of imagery where you can concentrate. If
Object.
Muslims have nothing, they'll put a photograph of Makkah behind them. Don't
That's
they
right.
do that? You go to any shop, you see the Makkah image behind them or somewhere else. So this idea of having, as you know, God has no image, that even India have a concept of Nirakar. Arya Samaj believes in Nirakar. Guru Nanak believed in Nirakar. Sikhs don't believe in any shape, but that's their belief. But they also put a Swarna Mandir photo at the back. Ultimately, a man requires some kind of focus. Why do you keep your father's photo at home?
Yes,
You could
yes.
remember in your mind. You keep, because when you look at the photograph, you get connected. That is the entire idea of Murti being representing God in the shape I want to believe in. As I said in another talk, that the beauty of Indian religions is that you can look at God the way you want to look at, in the image you want to look at the God. That means we believe God has no shape. We believe God is ultimately one truth. But I want to look at it the way I love that God. So I can love a dancing Krishna, I can love a meditating Buddha, I can love a ferocious Durga. So that is the way. Then we invented the image of God. God didn't say I'm this. So all imagery, if you look at if you go to any Chinmay mission and look at the book they called symbolism in Hinduism, primarily for young people, why different gods are represented a certain way? Why do gods are shown on small animals or large animals traveling on them? It is not that actually somebody is traveling a bullock or somebody riding a mouse. It is that imagery that we have to explain to them. What is that imagery? That is connection with the animal world. There's a connection with the nature. So once you understand the beauty of this, and the biggest strength that Hindus have today is that they believe in Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya. Everybody must be happy, not a Hindu, not a Muslim, not a Christian. Everybody has to be happy. Everybody has to be healthy. The way they say, Ek Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, that there is one God, you can look at them in different way. So that inclusive nature is a strength of Hinduism, not apologetic. It is for others to be apologetic for being so exclusive that they don't believe anybody can have liberation. They have to be apologetic, not Hindus. They open the heart for everybody.
No, you're absolutely right. The context in which I was saying defensive was when they're attacked. So when they're attacked, then they have to be. But actually, as in more Hindu community is getting more educated, and they understand that that's the way their religious leaders are working, they're getting immune to that. Growingly, they're
See,
getting
Aditya,
immune to
if you go to any site, if you go to any portal, you'll certainly find, even in Hindu portal, you'll find understand Islam. You click the button and go to an Islamic site. Understand Jesus. Come to Jesus. I have not seen any Hindu community having such site which is linked to big known portals where somebody can click and see what Hinduism is. That is our weakness. We have to go very assertively and expand our viewpoint, expand our belief system that people can read and understand. You can't just come to me saying you are an idiot. What do you worship? You worship an idol, and I can tell you in 2 minutes. If somebody really serious, he has to be able to reach that out. Everybody cannot go to ISKCON website. Everybody cannot go to XYZ website. And if you go to Tirupati Balaji, there is hardly any book which truly explains Hinduism. So the strength has to be, strength has to be expanded and told to the people. So we have to reach out. You can't blame others. Unless Hindus reach out, unless they pass their message and tell what it is, without asking people to convert, their mind will convert. After all, Americans today believe in karma, they believe in rebirth, they believe in Atma. Atma is not a Christian concept. Atma is not an Islamic concept, but people have started believing. So these ideas, that slowly people are imbibing basically Hindu ideas. So it is our weakness that we don't really go out and explain good. They don't give them an opportunities where they can click and easily find in the time of internet. It's very strange that our community has not used those tools yet.
See, it is a growing thing in the US. At least I can see that more and more Hindus are reaching out and explaining their viewpoint. But yes, it is as percentage of the population we are today. We are still doing less. We should be doing more. I totally take you on that. My last point, and then I'll give you the open forum to speak. Uh, that the recent racial issues that are being raised in the American politics, they have not connected with the Indian audience completely. So the partial reason is that Indians don't understand it. That is one reason also. They don't understand it. It's not part of the DNA. Like even the Chinese are not able to understand it. They don't understand it. But the the larger impact of that kind of lack of understanding or aloofness which people are perceiving is that the most of the people they club Indians with the whites or any other community, not based on the skin color but on the attitude. So, what do you have to say on that? And then we can end the talk here.
See, there are two parts. One is the economical issue. So naturally, the dispossessed will look at the kind of capitalism we have in the USA and the kind of thought process we have of you haves and have-nots and unhappy in the life of consumerism. There are people who don't get everything. They have a sense of frustration for the people who actually have those things. And that sense of frustration, that sense of anger is against the well-to-do community. It is not to do with Hindus or Indians or anybody else. I would not be surprised if the well-to-do Muslims also don't connect with those people. On the other side, there is religious and social ideas. Now, in that, we find that people who actually exploited them, who actually created mayhem in the name of religion, today are standing with the same black people whom they don't give a damn when they go to Africa. In Africa, Christians, black Africans are, persecuted, they are killed, they are maimed by the same people who are standing with them on the sidewalk today. So this strange phenomena, one is exploiting politically, which these kind of people are doing, which Hindus are not doing, Indians are not doing, because they feel it's very sensitive. It cannot be, normalized in terms of, discrimination, where you start, creating propaganda around your religion. On the other side, as I said, it is economic issue which is much more serious. For this, answer has to be found there. When you create unlimited consumerism, when you create a society where the difference between the rich and poor keeps on increasing, which is also the situation in India currently, for example, but then we don't have the consumerist culture. So when you want to acquire everything possible, and somewhere a person down the line cannot do it, as you see, growing poverty there. So this sense of dispossession is there. Luckily, we have dharma. Because of the sense of dharma, without even police, our people are not yet, going on street totally, destroying properties or robbing people, because the sense of dharma is still there. That sense of karma is still there. If that were there, America would see less of violence. Unfortunately, that is not there. Even Christianity as a religion has subsided. So we have to realize that sensitivity, that sensitization of the society, the real issues that concern them, whether it's economic dispossession or whether it's religious discrimination, it comes from the very thought of those religions, which today may be with you, but tomorrow they would be trying to overpower with their own ideas of Sharia, etc. So we have to be very sensitive to the concerns of the blacks, the Africans who came here hundreds of years back in a horrible condition. In my essay, I've talked about how they have referred to various documents, how millions of them, suffered, whether native Indians who suffered much more than even the people from came there. You cannot really reduce any atrocity on African blacks who came from by ships and dungeons, and many of them died on way, and they were not allowed to carry their name. They're not allowed to carry their traditions. They were made to forget everything to follow Bible, and that was a panacea, and it was done in the name of Bible. So that tragedy has to be understood, and once we understand that this issue is not really religion, this is issue typically exploitation, and that frustration has to overcome. There are generations gone, and if there is equality offered, there is racial discrimination solution in the democracy and the Constitution of US that must be implemented in not just law but also spirit. That will be the solution. And this triumphalism, whether of Islam or of whites, etc., has to go. We have to be sensitive. At the same time, people who are not done work in life, not blame us. They are white Americans or brown Americans. We know that. So same idea has to come through that America, you got a chance to grow if you work hard, and that is the answer to this. And we have to create those conditions that we don't get into this kind of violent scenario anymore.
Yes, very good points. And I think I mentioned in the last article, Dharmic Americanism is the new way forward.
Oh, that is very good, because
And
that typically understands the spirit of America, the spirit of social issues of America. I think you got the nub of your article of problems with the American society. As I noted that we from India cannot really understand the issues as you clearly pointed out, and that has to be read widely, because those are the concerns which really have to understand that, as I said, dharma is the way, where religion can be anything, but the sense of writer's duty, the sense of writer's conduct with the people, so we have to understand clearly that only those faiths which believe in inclusiveness, those who believe in coexistence with respect for every faith, they have to be established in America to overcome this kind of strong violent reaction that we see.
no, absolutely, and we have to come up with a new ideology, and also we also have to modify the America's founding fathers ideology, because America is not the country what it used to be, and to protect America from what it is going to go through based on the Indian experience, we have to work now and change in the ideology so that we can preserve what we have in America. So, Ratanji, thank you so much for coming today. It was a fabulous
Yes,
discussion as usual, and I think many people loved it. I can see many likes coming on now, and so we'll have some more exciting discussion like that on the current topics from the dharmic perspective. Namaskar, Ratanji.
thank you.